Our panel this afternoon, John Rogers, the Government's Director General of the Department of Growth, Housing and Environment. I had to read that because these department names get longer and longer. His business card follows him about 5 minutes behind in the streets. John has been in the upper echelons of government for the past decade now, working on a number of major capital and infrastructure projects, and now has an even broader portfolio, managing hundreds of people in the public sector. Maria Benbow is the government's new Group Director of Commercial Services, charged with using best practice commercial models to help the island achieve even greater success. Previously working in aerospace and defence and in public sector jobs in London as well, so bringing a fresh perspective to the island. Tony Moretta, the Chief Executive Officer of Digital Jersey, charged with the growth and ensuring the continued success of the digital industry in the island, previously working in mobile, online, broadcast, data analytics, and a reputation for telling it like it is as well, so we expect nothing else today. Daphne East is the Parish of St Helier's new Director of Customer Care and Care Services, also known as the Town Centre Manager for many years, previously working in the restaurant and hospitality trade, and a real expert in what best practice and customer service looks like, and Kevin Keane, who's basically done everything in this island. He wears many hats. Today he's taking those hats off, otherwise he wouldn't get his head through the door wearing them all. So speaking firmly in a personal capacity, but a interim chief exec of the JSPCA, non-exec chairman of Visit Jersey, non-exec board member at Jersey Dairy, previously building the reputations and turning around myriad businesses and organisations, and even, goodness, had a go at being a consultant in the States as well. So he's been down those corridors of power and knows where the skeletons are hiding. Ladies and gentlemen, your panel, please welcome them to the stage. Daphne is my friend for the day. There we go. Excellent. And Tony clearly isn't my friend for the day. I guess, we're talking about Jersey in 10 years from now, and there are so many aspects to unpack in this. I want to start with a sort of really big question to which there probably isn't an immediate answer, and perhaps I'll start with you, Tony, and work my way down. Jersey 10 years from now, just paint me a picture of what you think Jersey is.
Oh, it's a big one to start. Funny enough, I'm not sure how many people really realise what Jersey is today. I don't think people here appreciate what we have compared with other islands in particular. And I don't think people realise that we have what we have, and in a lucky position we don't particularly run a deficit. We have world-class infrastructure. I mean, only the other day, we had a report talking about internet speeds around the world. And Jersey was number 3 in the world, number 1 in Europe, number 3 in the world, only behind Singapore and Taiwan. You'd never guess, would you, probably from some of the moaning about things like that. So, but we have that because the big idea that we've had for years, and I'm relatively new here, but I think it was sort of Colin Powell's big idea, is that Jersey, unlike a lot of places, would focus and prioritise an industry. You talked about the finance industry, which had high productivity, high salaries, and that has given us all the other things we have across the economy. And I think as we move to the future, it might surprise people hear me say it, I hope that the finance industry does carry on adapting. The finance industry today is different than it was 10 years ago. People don't realise it, but it's managed to keep up there. But I think we can't take our eye off the ball. We have to think, what is the plan B? We have to think, what are the other industries, particularly digital, again I would say that, which are high productivity. And we have to think about investing in infrastructure, investing in technology, investing in education. But I think we are the envy of a lot of people around the world, and we need to remember that. And so our trick is we have to preserve that. And I'll throw something in. We do not want to be the Kodak of jurisdictions. We've got to watch what is happening around the world. We've got to adapt. We've got to be, Kevin and I were discussing, I'm not going to get into trouble with everything we discussed, Kevin. We were discussing, we always talk in Jersey that we can be nimble and agile, but we're not, are we? Let's face it. So I think we have to learn to get that back a bit over the next few years.
And in a nutshell, because I think we'll come back to it, from your perspective, where does digital plumb into finance? Because there are process jobs in the finance industry that in 1, 5, certainly 10 years' time, and perhaps thousands of them, those jobs may not even exist anymore.
Yeah, so the downside of automation or AI is that some jobs will go. The risk is if we don't adopt those technologies, all the jobs could go because we'd be less competitive. But the upside is AI in technology, automation, is a way of doing more business from the same workforce. Now that sounds like a pretty Jersey solution to me. So I think, again, we've got to adopt this technology, we've got to invest in it, but we need to use it as a way of moving people from paid more admin jobs to more fulfilling jobs, jobs that are, paying better salaries, paying more taxes, things like that, more productive, and keep Jersey competitive. So I think, finance and digital have a very close relationship around the world. We've got to get an even more close relationship in Jersey.
Maria, welcome to the island, welcome to the new role, welcome to the panel and the room here. I guess before I ask you that same question, can you just, in a nutshell, unpack your actual job? Because it sounds awfully grand, but I'll be honest, I still don't quite get it.
That's the secret. So, I am Commercial Services Director for the government. The government has never had a commercial services director before. It's had a very small procurement team. But what it essentially is, and I don't want to keep you all too long, but there's the procurement element which I'm in the middle of devising and developing a strategy to be more strategic. We're now part of the Chief Operating Office, whereas previously it was sat underneath the Treasury. And it was a pretty reactive team, to be fair to them. So now it's about designing the future using kind of some of the technology that Tony talks about to take out some of the basic administration and be a more strategic collaborative. Developing consortiums, collaborations with business, whether it's externally or even across some of our state organisations, etc. And trying to really get value for money and support the island to develop, including looking at new income generating type options and how we can.
Can't really hear you. Right.
Oh, sorry. Oh, that's because it slipped down.
Even closer. So this strikes me for certain people in this room. You may well be creating new commercial opportunities for the private sector.
Yes.
Looking in your crystal ball over the next 10 years of Jersey and you implementing this more commercial, public-private partnership, whatever it may be, what's the Jersey you see?
So I'm just trying to play. Is that better? So I don't see. I see there's loads of opportunity to move, to work together. So at the moment, there are lots of organisations that I've listened to. I've been out in the community, in the different groups, and lots of people saying they don't have visibility of government, or they'd like to work closer, or they'd like to they've got ideas. How could we develop those ideas? I see a way of much more integrated, perhaps less separation. I appreciate I'm new to government, so there are certain areas within government that are really good, really strong, have great bonds with the local businesses, but not across a piece. So I want to get that continuity and actually help us collectively develop our island and use the strengths across the island to work together.
John, from your perspective, a big new, perhaps more sprawling department. It's not just about merging squares in town, it's way more than that, and looking after growth and the economy as well. We won't mention vanity projects today at all. 10 years from now then, what is Jersey? Is it still finance-led? Actually, I will ask you, do we have a hospital? What?
Before you asked that question, I was thinking 10 years before that, so if you go back to 2009 when I became a chief officer, which was feels like a very short period of time, but it's gone quickly. The island's moved on, and I think one of the great things about Jersey, it does innovate, it does change. I think we've got to keep doing all the things we do, doing better, doing well, and I think there's a danger in things getting too big. So the diversity that the finance industry's been through, the fact that they've changed their model quietly, no one's seen it happen, but 10 years ago banking was more prevalent, and now it's changed into a different area. We do stuff, our infrastructure, I use the term infrastructure about stuff, not digital, which I think everybody assumes it's, but actually our roads, sewers, sea defences, our recycling centres, fantastic things we do, not just try and join two squares together, which we will do one day. I'm not sure if we'll do it by the 75th anniversary of Liberation, but maybe the 100th. So in 10 years' time, Jersey will be, well, according to the state's decision, will be carbon free.
Do you believe that? I probably shouldn't ask you that, should I?
I've got my assistant minister shaking his head.
Okay, I will unask you that question. Sorry, it's a bold ambition to head towards.
It is a very bold ambition. I really like the ambition. I think we should be the most environmental island on the planet. We should have PV on all the buildings, and we should all cycle to work. And that probably upsets most of the people in the room. But we haven't got through traffic, we haven't got big distances, and I think we can be, if we're bold enough, we can make a massive transformation and start leading, not waiting for Guernsey to do it, or be slightly better than Guernsey isn't the right aspiration. I think we can be. I've mentioned Guernsey, whoops. I think our ambition can be massive, and if you look at the success, I was in England, in London, small place, on Monday, where we were celebrating Jersey Day with Locate Jersey. There was 140 people attended. I sat with people who wanted to move to this island. The reasons they want to move here, because it's safe, it's secure, it's beautiful, it has great connections, we have fantastic restaurants and hotels. That's why we all want to be here. And I think that's what the essence we've got to keep whilst maintaining this fantastic economy.
Kevin, are we do good stuff, but are we too timid when it comes to the next big thing, or accepting that whatever we do, there will be a very vocal Green Ink Brigade, JP letters page, social media group, campaign lobby, therefore we pull our punches, or is that just me playing devil's advocate as a journalist who revels in that?
No, I think you're right, Gary. I think, sometimes you feel like we've lost our boldness, and, if the new finance industry came along today, would we allow it to happen? So I think I'm the token Jerseyman on this panel by the look of it, sort of thing.
Never token.
I've been here all of my 61 years, but when I was a child, tourism was 50% of the economy. Now it's 8%. I can remember not very long ago that the financial services was 50% of the economy, now it's 40%. So the one prediction that you can make about 10 years' time is things will be different. And, so we have to stay flexible and move quickly and take some risks. And I think sometimes I feel, I'm not going to be rude about politicians, because I don't think there's anybody in here, we all say they don't do a very good job, but none of us want to actually do the job. So I think we're very unfair to them. But the thing is that they listen a bit too much to the people who are against stuff, rather than just sometimes taking a few risks and getting on.
Yeah, I was going to pick up on that later, but the history of Jersey is a dominant economy that over time diminishes. There is a new dominant economy. We've been through agriculture and tourism and privateering back in the day, and here we are with finance. Just a few days ago, there was a report from Statistics Jersey showing, finance doing all right, productivity 1% up, but still not recovered its size from 2007, 2008. Are we doing enough to think about what the next big industry is or should be, or the next iteration of finance should be, or is it just that it's happening quietly behind the scenes?
I think that the challenge is that government probably won't come up with the ideas, but they should create the environment so that those ideas can grow. And, a thing that drives me nuts is this GVA per capita measure, where you have this thing as, well, unless it's such and such GVA per capita, we don't want it, because it's low value. And I think that is awful, because I think it means that so many things that are very important may not be particularly high economic value. The care sector would be an example. Unfortunately, the sector that I am involved in, tourism, we get that as well. And I think we just don't think enough about the interconnectivity of the economy, and also it's not just high GVA. To me, it's high potential. And if we just say, well, we want the finance industry like it is tomorrow, otherwise we don't want it at all, we'll never get there. So I think we've got to be a bit more thoughtful. And I was saying to Tony about where is the current day Colin Powell, where is he, the big brain to say this is what we should be doing next and advising government to support or what?
And you pose that as a rhetorical question, but where is the next Colin Powell? I mean, do you see that man or woman or child in this room or in the street? You know, do they exist?
Well, there's plenty of people in business that have got some big ideas, isn't it? But I think the government desperately need a Colin Powell again, a big thinker, and they need to get their mojo back about taking the odd risk now and then.
So we've touched on finance and digital, and we've touched on procurement and efficiencies and infrastructure. What about retail in 10 years, Daphne? I guess we just press an app. We don't need shops anymore.
Of course you need shops.
Right answer.
Of course you do. Challenging question. I think our town centre and retail will definitely get smaller in the years, but I think, as you can see, our pattern for having empty shops is quite low. So we are behind the curve in terms of the UK town centres and the amount of store closures they have. It will get smaller, however, I think it will probably have more digital technology, but also the town centre will become something that is more of an experience. So it'll be something where people live, they want to be in the town centre. This is the only place I've ever lived in I won't say how many years, but my very short life, shall I say, where nobody wants to live in the heart of the county, the country, the island. And I think St Helier will get to that place. I think we will be the urban, kind of ecocosm where it will be a green environment. We'll be able to cycle. We'll have great shops. I'm not saying we'll open 24/7, but we may have Sunday trading. We may be open a little bit later as the consumer demands. So I think retail will change. We will open later as the consumer requires. We will open Sundays. We will be there for the visitor economy, but it will just be a smaller offering, probably more quality.
I just wonder whether the foot dragging over Sunday trading, we had the ministerial decision to draft the law, to take to the state, to consider it, to enact it, and that conversation started last year but happened finally last week, and a retail strategy is going to come tomorrow, next week, next year, and it's still not here, and we're July and another summer season is nearly over. Is the message from your perspective from government that you're not important?
It certainly felt like that probably 18 months ago. I think government have proved that retail is important by supporting the Jersey Retail Association. Government are very active with Chamber. I think government have listened over the last 18 months. However, it's just getting over that line, and as Kevin and John said, it's about being brave. So now retail need big decisions, and they need them made quickly, because legislation is killing retail in terms of all of these policies and legislations that are coming in. So government needs to support on the fringes, but let retail be retailers and move on.
I was going to say, I will open this up to questions towards the end, but if there's anything along the way where you feel like you do want to interject and can't wait, do say so. We'll find a roving microphone and I'll get it to you. Policies and legislation that's getting in the way of businesses just doing their job without the faffy nanny states getting in the way to keep overpaid civil servants in jobs pen pushing. What specifically are you talking about? Sorry, I might have paraphrased slightly, but it was in your eyes.
Yeah, you knew. So if you think about family-friendly legislation is the topical one at the moment, clearly Chamber have consulted on that and consulted members, and it, in its first format, it wasn't suitable for businesses. It was going to have a huge impact on particularly the retail businesses and hospitality. So again, those low-value industries where, are we important or are we not? Actually, if we don't have great retail and they're not allowed to retail and do their best, then you won't want to be in the island, because you'll have an empty town centre with no retail, no hospitality, and it won't be attractive for anybody to be here. So I think legislation like that needs to be consulted on more readily and be part of the process rather than...
That's what I wanted to get clarity on. This isn't retail as opposed to family-friendly legislation. This is retail would like government to gather the evidence in the round, listen to us more carefully before jumping feet first in with a good idea badly enacted.
Thank you for summarising that.
I'm here all day.
Yes, exactly that. So we don't want to, retail doesn't want to be the last one to find out about it. We mentioned retail tax because that's quite controversial. They were the last ones to find out about that. No consultation given. So I think we don't want to go back to that. We want to make sure that retail is sat there at the table to shape that legislation and have a voice. And if that's not presented with something that's just not workable.
John, this may be too political for you to answer, so do just say. No, I genuinely don't want to put you on the spot if you feel you can't answer this. But have you noticed in your time, I mean, it's more than 10 years, but 10 years in the top corridors, as it were, do you recognise what Daphne is saying here about some of the processes when government is coming forward with what it thinks is good ideas? And are you noticing any changes to the benefit of industry, i.e. listening more earlier?
Certainly on the economy side, the traditional economies, I think 10 years ago were largely ignored. I think that's a fair point. Is that not working?
It is working, but not enough. There we go. You're softly spoken.
Am I?
Yeah.
That's the first. So yeah, the traditional economies, I think that that balance of the economy is absolutely essential here. You're not going to have a finance industry if you don't have the restaurants, the shopping, the other facilities that we have here. And once you've accepted that, the economic development team are absolutely focusing on those traditional industries, as is Jersey Business, and actually trying to get their productivity up and supporting them. And there's been a lot of private sector investment as well. We're sat in a very modern hotel, aren't we, as one of many now that Jersey has. 20 years ago when I came here, they were all being knocked down and converted into flats. So the sort of confidence has come back, but we as government has got to be enabling, and we've got to listen to the right people. In Jersey there's a small amount of people who are very noisy, but they're perhaps not the right people. And the hardest thing as an officer, as government, is to actually talk to normal people. Am I allowed to say that?
No, I get completely what you mean. I mean, there are echo chambers internally, but there are also, I was about to say gosh, I won't. There are loud people who are very good at getting their points of view across, including through the media, but they represent barely any more than themselves on some occasion. And I just wonder whether you're then changing tack, not you personally, but you, the government, changing tact too readily, and perhaps with the wrong winds blowing you off course.
Yeah, I think for a politician, it's harder now than it's ever been, and I've got great admiration in anybody who stands to be a politician, because if you look at the and I see the correspondence to get, and it's bloody awful. I'm probably not allowed to swear, but I wouldn't treat anybody like that. And they've got to be the brave people who has actually got to move the island forwards. And they will, no matter what you do, if you're trying to build a hospital, and I've tried twice, there's always somebody who doesn't like your solution, despite, and me and Gary had a good hour on that, didn't we? So I think what we've got to do is be brave enough to step above that, but I think there's a responsibility in this room as well for normal, straightforward businessmen and women and people of our island to actually give comments. And that silent majority who goes along living their fantastic lives actually need to comment more, because the comments get skewed. The consultations are attended by people who like going to them. Does anybody like going to a consultation on a government thing? We don't. So I think we've got to have a better voice. I promised last year to stop listening to grey-haired old men about everything.
You should listen to yourself.
No, I don't. And I think we should be listening to younger people. We should be listening to other people who are not grey-haired old men. Mine included, definitely.
Well, it's still black, Tony. I'm going to deploy the P word in a public forum right now, so apologies for doing this, but population. The one that won't go away, the elephant in the room. We have a government that's produced a population policy, and then we have a general election, and then we bin that population policy, and then many months later we set up a working group to consider a population policy, and then if the jungle drums reach me or anything to go by, perhaps some of where they're heading is alarmingly similar to the last population policy. How big an issue is that for this island today and tomorrow from your perspective? Because one of your jobs is attracting these entrepreneurs, these wealth creators to the island in the first place, but there's a brick wall for some of them.
So it's an interesting one, and John was just talking about the people we had lunch with on Monday who are looking to move to Jersey. For those of us who are quite new to Jersey, it sometimes seems quite odd, this obsession with population, because I hear people say Jersey's crowded. And visitors to the island, other people say, really, have you been in a big city recently? And you go to anywhere in the UK, there are new housing estates going up, the trains are busier, the traffic's worse and things like that. Actually, I'm convinced one of the things when people say it's overcrowded, they mean rush hour traffic's too bad. So let's think of ways of solving that through sustainable transport strategy we've talked about here. Jersey could, with the right planning, I think, have more people here. We hear people giving lip service but don't really take it seriously, that the trick in the modern age is going to be to have a sustainably sized workforce, because we have an older population, the population is going to get bigger. And actually, when you look around the world, would we rather be like Guernsey, I've used it again, and have population decline, which means it's an older population, it's harder to attract young people, it's harder to attract transport links and the right sort of tourism and things like that. But I think I can understand that we do have to prioritise it, and I think prioritisation is difficult in Jersey. And what Kevin was saying about the brain power, I think we talk about right-sizing Jersey in terms of population. I think we also need to do that and look at it at industry as well. So I do agree with everyone who says what makes Jersey so attractive is the combination. I love working in a tourist destination. I've never really done that before. And why do people come over? They come over for the restaurants and the nice places to go to. I actually think Jersey's, because it invents its own entertainment, so to speak, because you can't just pop down the road to the nearest town as you can in the UK. But maybe we do need to start to think about looking at the economy. What is the right size of the finance industry? What's the right size for digital? What's the right size for tourism? And you can never guess the future, but do some scenario planning and then translate that through to the workforce. I still see, sadly, some really nuts decisions about immigration. And I think we have to have, and I'm sure we will from some of the discussions I've had with officers, I think historically, and some people won't like me saying this, we've had an immigration policy which has been dictated by the finance industry, and it's been dictated by money. It's not being dictated by age and skills and experience and things like that, which are all important. So we need a more balanced immigration policy. I see decisions taken where somebody who's got a license because they married someone, they're doing a technically skilled job, they're downgraded because their other half moves to a different job, and they're told you have to go to registered accommodation because that person is building new products and services that they're exporting, they've got a great career ahead of them. And what sort of signal does that send to people in the workforce? You just say to them, we don't want you here anymore. And what will they do? They'll leave, because these skills that we want in Jersey are in demand around the world. So we have to strike a balance, and that's difficult here, between looking after the environment we have here, but making sure we have the skills and the workforce we need for the future across all our industries.
We're going to pass the stick mic down the line because that's working rather well. So if you don't mind passing that to Maria, mainly so I can stop you talking, Tony. No, I'm only joking.
I'm speaking loudly.
Maria, you're new to this. This is, I guess this is new territory to you. It's certainly for me when I moved to the islands, and it was Guernsey first. Sorry, we keep swearing in this room using the G word as well. I understand the policies and rules need to exist, but I thought they were absolutely barn pots. Have you got your head round it and why it matters so much yet?
So I'm not going to make any comments on the migration policy because it's not my field, and
I wouldn't do that to you. I just wondered whether you were struck by how obsessed we are with this.
Yes, it's somewhat. So I was brought up in West Dorset, which a small town called Bridport, which is very similar actually has some similarities to Jersey, but has far more diversity than here, and not because it's quite small. It doesn't have actually the finance sector, the tourism sector, or the economy that Jersey has, but yet the diversity and the willingness to embrace new people and new ways of working and bring in new creative ideas is there. Then when I go back and I see my mum back there, I see the change in the town and how it's been embraced. I find it quite interesting. I've just joined the Lean In Jersey committee, and the colleagues that I've met there, we've had our first committee meeting, and it's a fascinating insight actually into some of the history, and quite a lot of people on that committee are Jersey born and bred, and so that's interesting. But if you forward 10 years, and if you look at futurologist reports, and if we really kind of try to go into the future, actually, and it's happening now anyway, a lot of people don't work where they live. So the world is a very open place, and technology enables that. I've got friends who have been travelling around the world for 10, 20 years now, working, freelancing in different creative, in your genre, markets, which actually, do you really need to have people sat in a place or located in a place? And will the future, so will people's children in the room or younger people in the room actually want to just be in the same place? I don't think they will. So I'm kind of like, it's an interesting discussion, but I'm not sure it's a future-proof piece.
John, from your perspective, working on growth and infrastructure and innovation, without having just pass the mic down this way if that's all right. Oh, you got my side. Mic's coming out of our ears here. Without a population policy in place, population projections for me seem like finger in the air, back of a fag packet, because how can you do it without the data? And I know this man here lives in a world of data. When you're doing what you're doing, how big a problem is this hole in what you're trying to do, this hole in the donors of information, not having a population policy?
There is a policy, and does that work? Yeah. There is a policy and there are numbers, but they don't reflect the reality. Yeah. And I'm not sure if they ever have. Because the government doesn't control policy, it doesn't control population, because you can still move to the island and you can still work in the island if you're in those sectors. I think it's great that people want to come here. I think we've got to be a bit more innovative in how we house people properly and house people at a better standard, how we give them better life choices, how we reset, as Daphne said, St Helier as the place where people live, how we can perhaps develop our port, and maybe look at land reclamation again, which has sort of had a bad press 10, 20 years ago, but all the great places people are living now are on land reclamation. In lots of other countries, that's a big positive, and in Jersey we've seen it as a slight negative. So is there an opportunity to do more land reclamation, to build higher? You know, are we brave enough to do that again? Because we built higher in the 60s and 70s, and then we sort of stopped for 20, 30 years. So there is so population in terms of infrastructure, we've got to do another study on that, but we always build some spare in there, because what you can't have is something that is slightly undersized. Energy from waste plants are a good example, but also sewage networks and all the boring stuff that I'm excited about, no one else is.
And nobody wants that backing up on them, do they?
They don't want it failing. People love the fact that it doesn't exist because we manage it well, but if it fails, we'll all know about it.
You've got a fine stopcock. Can I just ask you, when it comes to land reclamation, when it comes to building higher or building lower, that's a big idea from somebody brave with vision. I'm not asking you to form a view of the current crop. Does that rely on having strong politicians and strong members of the community championing these things? Does it rely, what I'm saying is, does it rely on personality rather than policy to have those paradigm shifts when it comes to those big ideas?
It's a really good question. I think you need the strong politicians, but you also need backing from, again, people in this room, the social media feedbacks, the commentary. Some positive commentary on something the government's doing will be really nice to see sometimes. And we sort of hang on to it. Someone sent me a compliment last week because of my staff had helped somebody change their tyre. And it was just a lovely thing to receive. Of the 100 criticisms we get, to get one positive was just lovely. And I think we've got to just go back into that space where people are supporting things and actually starting thinking a bit freer about those things. So I think politicians can be really brave if the community is behind them.
We're sort of meandering to and from population, but I'll carry on down the line here. Kevin, with population, I guess with your tourism hat on, and it's probably going to be a similar answer, I suspect, to retail right now as well. How big an issue is this for Jersey today, and how big an issue do you see this becoming in the coming years without some really data-driven action?
I mean, I've been saying for a while we need a really grown-up debate about population in the island, and it's up to our leaders to lead that debate on an informed basis. We've got to get our heads around the idea that the headline population is going to be going up, because the over 65s, I looked at something the other day, between the census and the latest figures, the number of people over 65 had gone up from 14,000 to 18,000, a 25% increase, and it's predicted to go up another 10,000 or so by 2030. So unless our intention is to shrink the working population, then the headline population has got to go up. So I think we always focus on the headline, we should focus on the working population. And I think sometimes politicians listen, back to this thing about the minority. I think we're all grown-ups, and I think if we were taken through the issues and the options in a grown-up way and say we have to make choices and there are trade-offs, most people would realise that. We can't evict pensioners. Well, I hope we don't, because I'll be one soon, kind of thing. So what are we going to do? What are we going to do?
I mean, it does surprise me that that debate doesn't get led from the top politically. More often, it's focused on whatever the population number is, 106, 108,000, goodness knows what it is this week. But instead, that dependency ratio, which is the bigger growing issue, why we aren't having a slightly more grown-up conversation. From tourism to retail, Daphne, I'll let you take the stick mic as well. Again, how pressing an issue. You spoke about family-friendly legislation, but I hear about a recruitment crisis. It's always a crisis. I hear about a crisis in retail and hospitality. Is that real, or is that just overblown, overwritten journalism of which I wouldn't recognise ever?
Of course not. No, it's real. It's there, and we've been talking about it for quite a while now. And it's also very important to note that retail and hospitality are working very closely on skills initiatives. So they're trying to get people who are currently on the island, potentially leaving school, marketing their industries in a way that that finance have done really, really well, and trying to get people into that industry. So already is in the process of the skills marketing with those two areas, but then government need to also listen and allow people can't run the businesses if they don't have staff. And my concern is that if we don't have good staff, again, you won't want to be here if you get really bad customer service or there's nobody to serve you in a restaurant. So we need to be mindful that these industries are vital to everybody's lives every day of the week, and are visiting tourists. So we need to be very, very careful and be brave and allow it to happen. Allow business to thrive with government supporting them.
And that ties in, I think, with what Kevin was saying a little earlier when we obsess about the GVA of finance and perhaps overlook not just the pound, shilling and pence of a hospitality or retail job, but actually the very people who will be using those outlets are the ones earning the good money perhaps in the finance sector. It's all part of the circle of life in Jersey terms.
Absolutely. It's a social network, isn't it? It's a social interaction. So when you come into town, you don't come in to just pay your tax bill. You can do that online now, can't you? Which is very good. You come in for the nice things. You come in for an experience. And I think it's really important to have a good experience. We all know, as John said, when you have a bad experience or you get a bad comment, about whatever it may be, customer service or an unclean street, that really does affect people. But actually we should be shouting out the great stuff that we do as well. So really important to have it at a very basic level all the way up.
I like it. We've got through about 1% of the things I wanted us to talk about today, but time flies by when you're having fun, or something like that. Any questions in the room? Murray has got his roving microphone. Any questions, observations, thoughts? Please stick your hand in the air, tell us who you are. There's a gentleman in the far corner over there. Just your name and your question or comment, sir.
I'm on the way to you, Tony. It's always the person in the corner.
They lurk in anticipation.
In Benbows, there was some talking there of the need for bringing skills and so on. And although he hasn't had a chance to mention it, I understand Tony Moretta's had quite a lot of initiative in bringing digital skills and training into Jersey for younger people. I wonder if you could speak about that.
Tony, dive in. I know it's a very big year for Digital Jersey with the Digital Jersey Academy, but it's far more than that.
Well, it is, and let's be positive about this. across the whole piece, because I think the importance of skills to industry is something which has become a much bigger issue even in the last few years I've been here. You know, going on as we speak over at one of the other hotels, Jennifer and I are going over there to speak on a panel after this, is a higher education event looking at future skills. We had a skills strategy in Jersey that set up Skills Jersey. They're doing a great job, and anyone went up to the careers fair, the skills fair that's there. We've had investment, a lot of support from government, so we'll be opening a dedicated digital skills academy in September. And this is one of the things that feeds into the population debate. We need to invest in education so we get a better skilled workforce here that actually means we are less reliant on immigration, but that takes investment. You know, I said before, there was an economist speaking at a chamber event a couple of years ago, and he was looking at the challenges we have about productivity as an island, and we do have challenges around that. And he said the way you address that is you invest in education and you invest in technology, but you have to do both. You can't just do one. So I think that is something we have to do. We have challenges. If you look at the last census, and if you use the international definition of a highly skilled workforce, Jersey surprisingly is in the bottom 15% in Europe. And we have to do something about that. And if I was in politics and other areas of government, that sort of statistic would scare me. And we have to invest in that. But the good news is I think that the importance of skills is being seen around the place. So I think, you know, we invest in that, we solve some of the immigration problems, we solve some of the issues about automation, because if you have a more highly skilled job, it's less likely it's going to be automated.
Thank you very much, Tony. We've got room for one more, time for one more if somebody else wants to add an observation. Two more here, go on then, both of you. The guy in the natty shirts and the guy in the not as natty shirts.
Hi there, Nathan Wright. I was interested in what you were saying about sort of trying to get youngsters involved, because my daughter's 21 and she's currently at university, and her definition of what her friends think of Jersey is it's a joke. You know, we can't even decide on getting our hospital right. And this is her view. She's a 21-year-old who I'm trying to encourage to come back to Jersey and put back into where she's from. And she's saying, do you know what, Dad? It's just nothing there. You know, we can't even get festivals on the beach when, you know, for things to do at the weekend. She goes, I can go to a festival, I've got hundreds of them around where I am, or things to do, and she said, it doesn't happen. And she said, it's all very well saying these things, but she said, like you said, there's grey-haired old men making decisions. What's there for youngsters?
I'm going to leave that hanging there and bolt onto the end of it. The gentleman in the light shirt with the sunglasses hanging out here as well, who I suspect is ever so slightly younger and has just removed the sunglasses too, just to make it even more awkward for Murray.
I was just wondering, as this transition towards carbon zero happens, and obviously fuel duty is an important factor, what might replace fuel duty as a source of road taxation, as a user-pays system? Because obviously if we do go to electric, there's no tax on electricity, that's the same as fuel duty, and how might we reconcile that?
Which is interestingly something Guernsey is looking at right now in terms of a distance tax. So it's kind of platform agnostic, whether you're pumping petrol or diesel or electricity. And John, does this sit anywhere within your domain at all, as a growth thingy and thingy?
Yes. Yes, it's in growth thingy and thingy. You're absolutely right. Fossil fuels use is going to diminish over time. The transition in the vehicle market is moving at a pace now. There is lots of ways we can actually stop behaviour. What worries me a bit is electric cars is an electric traffic jam, and I like electric cars. I've actually been in a few. But I think we've got to really think better. Electric buses, we've got our bus company sat here, it was my favourite company. They are promoting to try and use an electric bus. That's where you get the big changes in terms of behaviour and our carbon footprint. Electric bicycles, hopefully we'll be launching a subsidy scheme again for electric bicycles in the near future. So I think there is there will always be a need for mass transport, for transport of goods and transport of people, and if you're old and infirm or you need to take your children to school or wherever. But I think we've got to find innovative ways of charging for that. For me, car parking charges, I'll probably get shot now, is too cheap in Jersey. We've got a fantastic mechanism now with pay by phone, and we should ramp that up. And if you look at innovative places like Nottingham, they put a car park levy on all private sector car parking spaces in the town. They did that a while ago, and that paid for their tram and their sustainable transport infrastructure. And the worry was everybody moved to Leicester, which is close by, and they didn't. It made Nottingham a better place. It made Nottingham a more vibrant place and a better place for people to live and work. So again, that's where the bravery needs. And we're actually working in conjunction with Guernsey about possible options for how to raise money to sustain the transport network.
Well, there's a form of words I never thought I'd hear. Innovative places like Nottingham. You learn something new every day. Ladies and gentlemen, Tony, Maria, John, Kevin and Daphne, please could you give them your thanks. Thank you very much all of you. Appreciate your time today.
Gary, could you please give Gary thanks as well, please? Thank you very much, Gary, for hosting that for us.